The clink of a ceramic cup startled McGregor just enough to pull his eyes off the newspaper. He glanced up, expecting the waitress with his refill. Instead, it was a little girl, couldn't have been more than 8, standing beside his table, hands clasped, eyes wide like they were holding something fragile inside. "Are you the man who boxed Floyd Mayweather?" McGregor blinked, then gave a slow, amused smile. He folded the paper and leaned back. "I suppose I am. Depends who's asking." "My name's Ellie. My dad says you're a fighter, but my mom says fighters are usually lost people." She said it like she was reading from a book she didn't quite understand. The cafe hushed around them, a low hum of conversations and coffee machines. Outside, New York rain hit the window in soft bursts, blurring the cars and lights into grey watercolor. McGregor's smile faded. The words didn't sting, but something about her tone, so honest, so curious, settled into his chest. He leaned forward. "What do you think?" Ellie looked down, twisting the sleeve of her pink hoodie. "I think people fight because something's broken inside, like when my dad gets mad and punches the garage wall." McGregor nodded slowly. He knew that kind of fury, knew the silence after it too. She hesitated, then looked him straight in the eyes. Do you believe in God?" He froze. Of all the questions, political ones about regrets, violence, even fatherhood, no one had ever asked him that. Not directly, not like this. "I don't know," he said honestly, his voice softer than expected. "Sometimes I think there is one. Sometimes I think I just wanted there to be when things were rough." Ellie looked disappointed, not in him, just in the answer. "But," he continued, "when I'm in the ring or when I hold my son or when someone like you asks me something real, something true, it feels like there's something bigger, not like a man in the sky, more like something inside people, a kind of light." Ellie's eyes filled with tears. "I don't mean to make you cry," McGregor said quickly, sitting upright. "Did I say something wrong?" She shook her head, wiping her cheeks. "No, it's just, I asked my pastor last week and he said only people who pray every day can feel God. But I think you do." McGregor didn't know what to say. His throat tightened, and for once the words didn't come. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she turned and walked back to the woman waiting by the door, probably her mom. He watched them go. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a fighter. He felt something else. Maybe broken things weren't meant to stay broken. The rain had stopped by the time McGregor stepped out of the cafe, but everything still looked wet. The pavement, the parked cars, even the air itself. He zipped up his black hoodie and shoved his hands into the pockets, walking with no real destination. Something about that little girl's voice clung to him. "Do you believe in God?" He'd been asked a million things, about his tattoos, about the Vegas nights, about losing, about winning, but never that. But he wandered through the side streets of Soho, passing boutique storefronts and people hunched under umbrellas, heads down. New York never stopped. No matter who you were, it just kept moving. But inside McGregor, something wasn't moving at all. He pulled out his phone. No texts from Dee. She was back in Dublin with the kids. They'd talked that morning, but it had been short. She sounded tired. He hadn't said, "I miss you." He'd meant to, but the words had gotten stuck between pride and routine. At a red light, he found himself across from a small Episcopal church. Its red brick facade was chipped, and the white paint on the windowsills was peeling. A sign out front read, "Come as you are, even if you don't know why." He stared at it for a long time. The cross above the door wasn't dramatic. It was plain, unassuming, but something about it made him stop. Maybe it was Ellie's voice again. "I think you do." He crossed the street. Inside, the church was quiet. A few people sat scattered across the pews. No music, no sermon, just silence and the smell of old wood and candle wax. He stood in the back, unsure if he belonged. A woman in a long cardigan smiled as she passed him. "You're welcome to sit if you'd like." McGregor nodded, awkwardly choosing a pew halfway down. He sat with his arms crossed, staring at the altar. He didn't pray. He didn't even know how to start. But something kept him there. After a while, an older man with salt and pepper hair sat beside him. Not close, just near enough. "You look like you've got something weighing on you," the man said gently. McGregor chuckled without humor. "Yeah, you could say that. Sometimes just being here helps, even if you don't know what you're looking for." McGregor looked at him, really looked. "You a priest?" The man shook his head. "No, just someone who's been broken before." That word again, broken. McGregor didn't reply, but he didn't leave either. The man eventually stood. "Take your time, it's a good place for it." McGregor sat there for another 20 minutes. Didn't say a word, didn't cry, but when he walked out, the city looked a little less cold. The weight wasn't gone, but it had shifted just enough to keep walking. The hotel room was too quiet. McGregor tossed his hoodie on the armchair and stared at his reflection in the mirror above the minibar. His eyes looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, he'd gotten used to that. No, this was the kind of tired that settled deep behind the eyes, the kind you couldn't sweat out in a gym. He leaned forward, palms on the counter, studying the lines on his face. A fighter's face. But that little girl hadn't seen a fighter. She'd seen something else. "I think you feel God." He almost laughed. How could she have known? He hadn't felt anything in a long time, not during the fights, not on private jets, not even when his son called him Da over the phone with that tiny Irish accent that used to melt him. He ran a hand over his face and grabbed the remote. Flipped through the channels, news, some late-night comedy, a rerun of his own fight against Khabib. He paused. There he was, younger, harder, walking into the octagon with fire in his eyes. The crowd roared, his fists flew, but even now, watching it, he didn't feel proud. He felt disconnected, like he was watching someone else's life. His phone buzzed, a text from Dee. "Kids asleep. Everyone's okay, hope you're good. X." He stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "Tell Connor Jr. Da says hi. I love you." He hit send before he could overthink it. Then he sat down on the bed, phone in hand, and opened his notes app. Blank page. He started typing, "Things I believe. Pain makes people hard. Kids see through everything. Love doesn't leave. We just walk away from it. I don't know if there's a God, but something happened today. I don't want to be that version of me anymore." He stared at the list. This wasn't like him. He was the guy who made headlines for his temper, for buying $1 million watches and throwing punches outside nightclubs. He wasn't the guy who made lists about feelings in hotel rooms, but maybe that's exactly why he needed to. He picked up the room phone, dialed reception. "Can you connect me to the church at 312 Spring Street, the Episcopal one?" A pause. "Sure. Hold, please." A few clicks, then ringing. Then a calm voice. "Trinity Church. This is Mark." McGregor hesitated. "Yeah, I was there earlier. I didn't talk much, I just... Is there someone I can talk to tomorrow?" "Of course," the man said. "We're always here." McGregor nodded even though the man couldn't see him. "All right, thanks." He hung up, turned off the TV and laid back on the bed. For the first time in months, maybe years, he fell asleep without tossing. Morning light filtered through the curtains, golden and quiet. McGregor woke without an alarm, no pounding headache, no heavy chest, just stillness. He pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt, grabbed a baseball cap and headed out. No entourage, no bodyguards, just him. He walked back to the same cafe, the one where Ellie had asked her question. It was early, and only a few tables were occupied. The same waitress, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a kind smile, greeted him. "Back again," she said, handing him a menu without surprise. He nodded. "Coffee, black, and whatever breakfast you'd recommend." She raised an eyebrow. "Trusting strangers now?" "Trying to," he said. She disappeared into the kitchen. He watched her move. Efficient, invisible, like most people in this city who carried 10 stories behind their eyes and never told a single one. When she returned, he asked, "Do you know that little girl who was here yesterday?" "Ellie?" The waitress paused. "Yeah, comes in every couple weeks. Her mom's a nurse, single parent. Works overnight shifts. Ellie hangs out here after school sometimes when her mom can't pick her up right away. McGregor nodded slowly. That explained the tired look on the woman's face by the door, and the quiet way Ellie had spoken, mature but soft, like someone used to filling silence alone. She asked me something yesterday, caught me off guard. Yeah, the waitress said, placing the coffee down. She's like that, has a way of getting to the center of things. He sipped the coffee, the heat grounding him. I told her the truth, that I wasn't sure what I believed. She cried. The waitress didn't react, just leaned on the counter and looked at him. Not all tears are bad, she said. Sometimes they're just recognition, like your heart realizes someone else sees what you're carrying. That hit him harder than expected. He looked down. You ever wonder why people like me come into places like this? Sit alone, stare out windows, try to make sense of things we've screwed up. The woman smiled. All the time, and I never judge. Because I know everyone's carrying something. He wanted to ask her name, but she beat him to it. I'm Carla. Connor, he said, extending a hand. I know, she replied, not unkindly. They shook hands. A few quiet moments passed. Then Carla said, if you really want to do something with what that little girl gave you, don't just sit in it. Turn it into something. Like what? You'll know when it's time. She walked off to check on another table, and McGregor sat back, the coffee warming his hands. He didn't feel lost. He felt invited, like something was waiting for him just beyond the next decision. The church felt different in the daylight. McGregor stood at the entrance again, this time not hesitating. The wooden doors creaked as he stepped inside. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting soft colors across the stone floor. A few people sat scattered in the pews, heads bowed, some reading, others simply still. The quiet wrapped around him like a blanket, not heavy, not intimidating, just gentle. Mark, the man from the phone call, approached from a side aisle. He wore a navy sweater over a collared shirt, no collar tabs, no Bible in hand, just a man who looked like he knew how to listen. You came back, he said, his voice warm. I said I would, McGregor replied. Mark gestured to a bench off to the side, away from the others. They sat. You don't have to talk, Mark said. We can just sit. Or if there's something you're trying to figure out, McGregor nodded slowly, fingers interlaced between his knees. There's this girl, Ellie. She asked me if I believed in God. I told her I didn't know, and I meant it. But something about the way she asked, it hasn't left me. Mark smiled slightly. Children tend to ask the most honest questions. It's not just that. It's what I saw in her face after I answered, like she expected more from me. Like she thought I held something sacred and I wasn't even sure it was real. He paused. I've spent most of my life trying to prove I'm not weak, that I can't be broken. And then this little girl shows up and makes me feel like I've missed the whole point. Mark nodded. What do you think the point might be? I don't know, connection maybe, truth, owning the parts of myself I've buried for years. McGregor looked down. His voice dropped. I've hurt people, not just physically, people I love, with my anger, with my silence, with my pride. I don't know how to undo that. You don't undo it, Mark said gently. You live forward differently. That landed. You said yesterday you've been broken before, McGregor said. What happened? Mark's face shifted slightly, the way people do when revisiting something they don't talk about often. My son took his life at 23. He was brilliant, sensitive. The world overwhelmed him. I used to think faith was about answers, but after that, I realized it was more about staying open. Even when nothing makes sense. McGregor didn't speak, he couldn't. Mark looked at him. Whatever you're feeling now, that shift inside you, don't ignore it. Let it guide you, even if it's uncomfortable. McGregor nodded slowly, eyes stinging. He hadn't cried, not yet, but he knew it was close. He stood, shook Mark's hand and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the city was alive again. But McGregor felt still, not empty, just ready. He didn't know for what yet, but he knew where to start. Back in the hotel room, McGregor sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. He could hear Carla's words in his head. Don't just sit in it, turn it into something. He opened his voice recorder. No script, no filter, just instinct. He hit record. Ellie, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but I need to say it anyway. You asked me if I believed in God, and I told you I wasn't sure. That was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. He took a breath, looked out the window. When you asked me, something cracked open, not in a bad way, more like a door I forgot existed. I've been fighting most of my life, in the ring, out of it. Trying to prove something, trying to stay hard because soft never felt safe. He paused, his voice wavered. But you asked me something real, and when you looked at me, I didn't feel judged. I felt seen, like maybe deep down, I still had something good in me, something worth saving. He swallowed. You said you thought I felt God, and I think maybe I did. In that moment. Not as a voice or a rule book or a sermon, but as something quiet, something steady. Like a hand on my back telling me to keep going, but in a new direction. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've been thinking about what kind of man I want to be when my son gets older, what I want him to remember about me, what kind of world I'm leaving for him. And maybe, just maybe, that starts with listening to people like you, brave enough to ask the hard questions. A long silence. Then, thank you, Ellie. You changed something in me, and I don't even think you meant to. But you did. He stopped the recording, sat with it. Then, without thinking too hard, he forwarded the file to Dee with a short text. Play this for Connor Jr. one day. And maybe for yourself. He didn't wait for her reply. Instead, he pulled up a note in his phone and wrote the beginnings of a letter. Not to a sponsor, not for press, just a raw, messy letter to his son. One he'd finish later, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But it was a start. Then he did something else he hadn't done in years. He knelt by the edge of the bed. No words, no formality. Just silence. Maybe it wasn't a prayer. Or maybe it was the truest kind, the kind where you don't ask for anything. Just sit and listen. 2 weeks later, McGregor was back in Dublin. The flight had been quiet, no entourage, no media, just him, tucked into a window seat with a notebook and a pen. The city greeted him with grey skies and drizzle, but it felt more like home than it had in years. Dee met him at the airport. She didn't run into his arms, didn't scold or ask questions. She just stood there, eyes searching his face. Then she said, "You look different." "I feel different," he answered. At home, the kids were already asleep. The house was warm, cluttered in the usual ways, toys in the hallway, crumbs on the kitchen counter, laundry half folded on the couch. But McGregor loved it, every bit of it. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Dee sat beside him on the edge of their bed, holding her phone. "You sent me a voice message," she said softly. "I did. I listened to it 3 times. He looked at her. "You meant it?" "I did." She stared for a moment longer, then leaned her head on his shoulder. No speech, no dramatic forgiveness, just presence. That was enough. The next morning, McGregor woke early. While the kids were still asleep, he slipped out and drove to a small community center on the north side. A friend of his had started a youth boxing program there, one that focused more on mentorship than competition. He hadn't been back in months. The guy at the front desk did a double take. "Connor?" McGregor nodded. "Yeah. Thought I'd check in, see how the lads are doing." Soon he was in the gym watching boys no older than 12 hitting bags with more frustration than form. One kid in the corner, thin, wiry, guarded, reminded him of himself. He walked over and tapped the bag gently. "You're holding back. Why?" The boy shrugged. "Don't want to look stupid." McGregor knelt down. "You already look brave. Showing up?" "That's the hardest part." The boy's eyes met his for a moment, then he nodded. By the time McGregor left the center, he had promised to return twice a week to help coach. Not for PR, not for cameras, just because it felt right. On his way home, He stopped by a post office. He had something to send, an envelope addressed to a cafe in Soho. Inside it, a handwritten note. Ellie, you probably don't remember my name, but I'll never forget yours. You asked me a question that changed the way I see everything. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm starting to ask better questions. Thank you for your courage and your light. Connor. He sealed the envelope and dropped it into the box. Outside, the rain had stopped. For the first time in a long time, he felt clean. Hole, ready.